She was 17 years old. It was Christmas Eve. And she was sitting next to her mother on a plane that was about to be struck by lightning and torn apart 10,000 feet above the Amazon rainforest. What happened in the next 11 seconds would kill 91 people. What happened in the next 11 days would produce one of the most extraordinary survival stories in the history of human endurance. Her name was Juliane Köpke. She fell 2 miles through a tropical storm, still strapped to her airplane seat, into one of the most dangerous and impenetrable jungles on the surface of this planet. She landed in the Amazon, alone, injured. With no radio, no compass, no map, and no idea where she was, rescue teams searched for 10 days and found nothing. They concluded there were no survivors. They were wrong. Welcome to World Unveiled. Stay with me, because what this 17-year-old girl did next, injured, alone, surrounded by predators in the deepest jungle on Earth, will change the way you think about what a human being is capable of. Juliane Köpke was born to 2 German biologists who had established a research station deep in the Peruvian Amazon. Her parents, Hans Wilhelm and Maria Köpke, were scientists who had dedicated their lives to studying the wildlife of the rainforest. And Juliane had grown up between 2 worlds, the academic world of Lima, where she attended school, and the raw biological world of the Amazon, where her parents worked. This unusual upbringing gave her something that would ultimately save her life, a practical, unsentimental understanding of how the jungle worked. She knew which water sources to trust. She knew which sounds meant danger and which did not. She knew that, in the jungle, panic kills faster than any predator. She had learned all of this not from a survival manual, but from years of simply living near one of the most biodiverse and dangerous ecosystems on Earth, watching her parents work, absorbing their knowledge the way children absorb everything, quietly, naturally, without knowing that she was learning anything at all. On Christmas Eve 1971, 17-year-old Juliane boarded LANSA Flight 508 at Lima Airport in Peru. She and her mother were flying to Pucallpa to visit her father at the research station. They had fought to get 2 of the last seats available on the flight. It was a holiday journey, the kind of trip that feels ordinary in the planning and is remembered forever in the aftermath. Around 60 minutes after takeoff, the plane flew directly into a massive thunderstorm at 21,000 feet above the Amazon rainforest. Reports of severe weather had been passed to the pilots before departure, but the pressure of the holiday schedule meant the flight continued as planned. That decision would prove catastrophic. Lightning struck the aircraft's right wing. The fuel tank exploded. The wing caught fire and separated from the body of the plane. The aircraft began to disintegrate in midair. Juliane recalled hearing the screams of the other passengers before she lost consciousness as the plane plunged downward. She was sucked out of the disintegrating aircraft into the freezing, cold air of the night sky, still strapped to her seat. Again, fell more than 2 miles toward the jungle below. 91 other people were on that flight. Every single one of them died. Some in the explosion, some in the fall, some on impact with the jungle canopy. The wreckage of LANSA Flight 508 was scattered across miles of dense Amazon rainforest, broken into thousands of pieces, buried under one of the thickest forest canopies in the world. 10 hours after the crash, Juliane Köpke regained consciousness on the jungle floor, still strapped to the airplane seat she had been sitting in when the plane came apart. She was alive. She did not know how. No one who has studied her case has ever been able to fully explain why she survived a 2-mile fall when 91 other people did not. The leading theory is that the seat she was strapped to, combined with the thick jungle canopy below, acted together to slow her descent enough to survive. The seat catching air, the trees absorbing impact in stages rather than all at once. Whatever the reason, she opened her eyes on the floor of the Amazon rainforest on Christmas morning 1971, and she was alive. She had a broken collarbone, a deep gash in her arm, severe concussion, and her right eye was damaged from the sudden change in air pressure during the fall. She spent the rest of that first day dropping in and out of consciousness, too injured and weak to remove herself from the seat she was still strapped to. All around her was the Amazon, dense, dark, indifferent, and filled with every kind of danger imaginable. Caimans in the waterways, anacondas in the undergrowth, piranhas in the rivers, insects that could cause infections severe enough to kill within days. The heat was suffocating. The humidity was total, and Juliane Köpke was 17 years old, injured, alone, and completely without any means of communication with the outside world. She had no way of knowing that search and rescue operations had already been launched. She had no way of knowing that aircraft were scanning the jungle canopy for any sign of the wreckage. She had no way of knowing anything except what she could see with her own damaged eyes, the jungle floor around her, the canopy above her, and the complete and absolute absence of any other human being. When she finally managed to free herself from the seat, her first instinct was to search for her mother. She called out. She searched the immediate area. She could not find her mother anywhere near the crash site. Maria Köpke had not survived. But Juliane did not know that yet. She kept calling. The jungle absorbed the sound of her voice and gave nothing back. What Julianne did next is the part of this story that demonstrates just how extraordinary her upbringing had been. She did not panic. She did not stay in one place and wait to be found. She did not make the mistake that costs most people their lives in survival situations, overwhelm her capacity to think clearly. She remembered what her father had told her years earlier. During their time in the Amazon, he had said that if you are ever lost in the jungle and you can find running water, follow it downstream. Rivers and streams flow toward civilization. People build their lives near water. Follow the water, and eventually, however long it takes, you will find people. She found a small creek. She did not know where it led or how far it would take her. But she knew it was moving, and she followed it. She walked, day after day, through heat and rain and darkness, through water that sometimes reached her waist, through undergrowth so dense she had to force her body through it. Her only food during those 11 days was a small bag of sweets she had found near the crash site. She drank carefully from the creek, knowing that contaminated water in the Amazon can kill as surely as any predator. She treated the wound on her arm the way her parents had taught her, cleaning it, protecting it, watching for the signs of infection that could turn a cut into a death sentence in a tropical environment. On the 4th day of her trek, she heard king vultures nearby. She knew from her biological training that king vultures descend when there is rotting flesh in the area. She followed the sound and found 3 passengers from the flight, still strapped in their seats, dead. She searched them for anything she could use. Food, a compass, anything that might help. She found nothing useful. She kept walking. The wound in her arm had become infested with maggots, a common and deeply disturbing consequence of an untreated open wound in the tropical jungle, where flies lay eggs in exposed flesh within hours. She used a technique her parents had taught her, pouring gasoline she found near some wreckage into the wound to remove the maggots. The pain was extraordinary. She kept walking. By the 9th day, her body was pushed to the absolute edge of what it could endure. The injury, the hunger, the constant physical effort of moving through dense jungle and wading through waterways had taken everything she had to give. And still, she kept following the water downstream because it was the only plan she had, and she understood, with the cold clarity of someone who has thought through her situation completely, that stopping was dying. After 11 days alone in the Amazon rainforest, Julianne Kupsk found a small boat and a hut used by local fishermen near the bank of the river she had been following. She waited. The next day, 3 local fishermen arrived at the hut. They found her there, injured, exhausted, emaciated, barely recognizable as someone who had boarded a commercial flight 11 days earlier. They took care of her through the night, and the following day transported her by boat and then by plane to the nearest hospital. She was the sole survivor of Lanza Flight 508. 91 people had boarded that aircraft on Christmas Eve, 1971. 1 walked out of the Amazon. The questions that Julianne Kupsk's survival raises go far beyond the mechanics of how a human body can survive a 2-mile fall or 11 days alone in the Amazon. They go to something deeper, something about the relationship between knowledge and survival, between the life a person has lived before a crisis and their capacity to endure that crisis when it comes. Julianne survived because she had been prepared, without knowing she was being prepared, by a childhood spent in one of the most demanding natural environments on Earth. Her parents had not taught her jungle survival as a curriculum. They had simply lived their work, and she had absorbed their knowledge the way children absorb everything, through proximity, through observation, through the accumulated experience of years spent in a place most people never see. The advice her father had given her about following water downstream, advice delivered casually, years before, with no idea it would ever be needed, was the piece of knowledge that pointed her toward civilization and away from the interior of the jungle where no rescue team would ever have found her. Without that advice, she would have walked in the wrong direction. Without that knowledge, she would have stayed near the crash site and waited to be found. Without that preparation, she would have been one of the 91 rather than the 1. Julianne Kupsk later followed in her parents' footsteps and became a biologist, dedicating her career to the study of the Amazon rainforest that had nearly killed her, and to which she returned again and again throughout her professional life. She wrote a memoir about her experience. She returned to the crash site. She made her peace with what happened on Christmas Eve 1971 in a way that most people who have heard her story find almost as remarkable as the survival itself. Welcome to World Unveiled. 17 years old, 2 miles of freefall, 11 days alone in the Amazon, 91 dead, 1 survivor. And all she had was the knowledge her parents had given her, a small bag of sweets, and the absolute refusal to stop moving. Sometimes that is enough.